Let's head to the Netherlands now.
All right.
So let me ask you this question. What do Bill Gates and the Dutch farmer revolt have in common? Well, buckle your seatbelts for this and this is unbelievable. If you live in America or Canada, you might have missed what's been happening all over the rest of the world. You know, there was a 4th of July holiday this past weekend in the United States. There was a Canada holiday as well last week, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the Canadian holiday. I can barely keep track of the American holidays, but the Canadians, they had a holiday as well. So what is happening in the Netherlands is pretty important, and I think it has reverberations around the world. Farmers there are pissed that what the Dutch government is doing. Here's how the great website Countersignal reported. I'm going to just put it up on the screen because they have a good job of explaining it here. The World Economic Forum-controlled Dutch government announced last week an end to modern farming, putting harsh controls on nitrogen and spelling the end to thousands of family farms. In response, Dutch farmers took a page out of the Canadian Freedom Convoy playbook. They took to the highways, they blockaded borders, and they launched massive protests. And it's unbelievable. They actually so we have some video. They've been leading these trucker protests right into the backyards of the Green Left voters, which is a radical environmental party. So they basically got right on the road and they started driving these trucks full of manure right to government offices. These are full of cow manure.
Yeah.
Just dumping them right on government offices, their front steps.
Did they get that from Back to the Future?
Yeah, like with Biff. Is that Back to the Future 1 or 2?
I think it's 1.
Oh, that's 1. Yeah.
Where he skateboards and makes them run into the manure and it goes in the car.
And if dumping it's not enough, they're spraying it all over the place as well. So spraying manure everywhere.
Now, in these protests, I would suggest wearing masks.
Yes, wear masks during these protests. Wear your galoshes during this.
And gloves.
But this is what they're saying. And they argue that they're being targeted as polluters, right?
Well, okay, let's just go over what the law is, right? The new proposed laws would require farmers to cut their nitrous oxide emissions, which are largely produced by animal farming. And farmers are arguing, well, why just us? Why do we start here? And these laws came about because the government was negotiating construction projects and they could not get them passed because already they were at carbon emissions limits, right? And so they said, well, then we're going to have to start to budget. So where should we go? They did not go to the construction industry. They started with farming because this chemical is released into the air when fertilizer soaks into the soil or water, and ammonia is produced through the urine and feces of animals that are farmed, right? Produced for farming. So the government is doing this to farmers first, and these farmers are arguing that they are being unfairly targeted as polluters when aviation can continue, plastics manufacturers, other industries that also contribute to the same or more emissions are facing far less reaching rules. The government is also saying, part of this rule is to reduce the national speed limit from 130 kilometers per hour to 100 kilometers per hour. Like, is just during the day, is that going to do a whole lot? That for Americans is about 80 to 60 miles per hour.
Well, and so, I mentioned Countersignal mentioned World Economic Forum, and that's not just like a conspiracy theory you throw around. I mean, the WEF, the World Economic Forum, that wants you to own nothing and be happy about it. That's what they said, right? That's what they said in their meeting. That's what they said as part of the global reset. That's what they want. They don't want you to own anything. And
right,
by the way,
which is something that I would be fine with. Like, I like minimalism too. I like the idea of like not polluting the earth by consumerism, but they want us to own nothing and them to own everything, right? So it's not a like kumbaya, let's return to tribalism and take care of our local tribes. That's not what this is.
No,
that's you own nothing,
right,
but we will continue to build.
It's a consolidation of power, right? It's the removal of power from you, from the individual, into the hands of global elites. And by the way, again, I come back to Rand Paul pointing this out in the Senate. This is what they've said in their meetings, that they voted on this at Jackson Hole. This is exactly what they want. This is, and the global elites repeatedly tell us this. So this is not a surprise. Even last week, we heard from Brian Deasy at the White House saying that this is part of the liberal new world order.
Yeah.
This is what they want, right? So this is not a conspiracy theory.
You get used to less power in your life.
So, journalist, I'm going to butcher her last name but it's a Dutch last name. So help me here and forgive me. Her name is Eva. I hope I got that right. You never know. Eva, EVA. She's a journalist, and she was on Rebel News talking about this. And her last name is Vlaardinlingerbroek. Vlaardinlingerbroek. That's definitely a Dutch last name. Did I say that right, Philip? Vlaardingerbroek. Man, I'm going to call her Ava V.
Bueller.
Yeah, Philip's like, I'm not even saying anything on that one. So here is what she had to say on this global reset, and specifically about the World Economic Forum, because the head of Netherlands is very, very cozy with the World Economic Forum. Listen.
Mark Rutte. Yes, Mark Rutte is very, very deeply involved in the World Economic Forum. And, well, it's obvious that this law is a product, again, of these globalist institutions, because this needs to happen before 2030. Rings a bell, right? Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, World Economic Forum. It's very clear that this is a made-up crisis, which we've seen before with these organizations. That's the way they handle, that's the way they operate these things. They say, we have a crisis, and you are the ones that are going to have to solve this by giving up all of your rights. Yeah. So that's what's happening here. They're taking away these farmers' land. They're taking away property because they see a future for us in which we're completely dependent on the state. You eat bugs, and well, they own your land. You own nothing, and you'll be happy, is what they say to you. But these farmers are not happy, and I'm so proud that they're fighting this.
So then the Bill Gates connection to all of this. What is the Bill Gates connection to all of this? Well, I don't know if you know that, like, last week he bought up 2,000 acres of land in North Dakota. He's now the largest landowner in the United States. So what happened, Kian Bexty reported this, a Bill Gates Foundation supermarket in the Netherlands that focuses on new age foods like plant protein, because he doesn't want you to eat any meat. He just wants you to eat his money-backed plant protein
genetically modified or somehow factory made. Yes.
Right. So here's how Kian reported this. Breaking, a Bill Gates Foundation supermarket in the Netherlands that focuses on new age foods like plant protein meat has spontaneously caught fire in the middle of the night. And then this was the video. Take a look at this. This is the video of the fire at the Bill Gates food plant. Spontaneous in the middle of the night, going up in flames, by the way. And we've seen a number of these food production facilities on fire recently.
Now, do you think he's insinuating that it was set fire by protesters or set fire internally?
I don't know. Okay. I'll leave that. Hey, what do you guys think in the chat? Who set fire to this Bill Gates plant? Was it done by protesters? I mean, these have largely been, peaceful protests, but it happens in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
What's going on here? Now, there's been a lot of conspiracy theories online about, food production facilities across the United States catching on fire and so forth. I've looked into this, and I can find no evidence to suggest that they are related in any kind of way. There's, just to give you one example, a small airplane crashing nearby a food production facility in a field was one of these. And there's just random but they're not really related. If anyone has
as far as you can tell,
as far as I can tell, I've looked into it. I've dug into it. I have a couple of sources on this as well. They can find no exact evidence of that sabotage specifically. But if you do, please send it to me. But again, it seems like it's disparate and not really connected. But anyway, how is Bill Gates connected to all of this? So, I mean, here's his plant there catching fire in the Netherlands. And how is he connected to these farmers? Here's Eva again on this Bill Gates supermarket and why this is important. Listen.
It's not a real crisis. Obviously, nitrogen isn't a problem, especially not when you consider the fact that, well, the Netherlands, like I said, is such a small piece of land. Yeah. We have our neighboring countries, Belgium and Germany, that don't have to implement any of these measures, but the Dutch government is doing it. And the real reason, obviously, behind it is that the Dutch state wants the farmers' land. Because probably there are a couple of reasons. So the farmers, first of all, they're a group in society that are very self-reliant. They are basically ungovernable in that sense. They own a lot of the Dutch land. and they produce agricultural products, they have livestock, they produce beef. And what's interesting to know is that the Dutch minister who has pushed this nitrogen law has a brother-in-law who is the owner of the Dutch online supermarket called Picnic. Guess who invested $600 million in Picnic last year? Right, Bill Gates, the man who wants you to eat fake meat.
The man who wants to eat fake meat.
I'm interested in how she's saying that Dutch farmers are very self-reliant and therefore sort of out of control of the government, right?
I love that. I'm glad you picked up on that. I was wondering because I saw your eyebrow lift up.
Well, I'm just like, is that true? Because if so, that's a particularity of that government that I am not familiar with, because I know that in most developed nations, farmers are very dependent on the government through subsidies and restrictions and rules and all types of things. So I'm wondering, do they really operate as independently as she is saying?
It'd be interesting to see. I'd be curious to hear from our Dutch viewers. I know we've heard from a lot of folks in the Netherlands who've written to us saying, thank you for covering this story. Let us know. And they've also corrected us on pronunciation of their president, Rutte.
Okay.
But yes, let us know. Like, are they as independent as she's saying? And I think maybe she's speaking metaphorically that they live off the land, so they're not reliant on like the food source and food.
Perhaps, but we're talking about meat farmers mostly. We're mostly talking about meat farmers, and if you live on a diet of only meat, you're going to get gout, right?
I guess.
So
maybe
isn't that what you get from what is it that the royals used to get from not eating?
Yes, but then you can watch. I mean, heck, David went an all meat diet for like 2 months and lost all kinds of weight, and and we have other people like Jordan Peterson talking.
Okay, I don't want to talk about nutrition. That's not where I wanted to go. Right. Okay. But that was an aside.
Well, you just asked me a question about gout. All I'm saying is that there's.
But it was an anecdote.
Watch what Jordan Peterson has to say about. He went on the all meat diet. Even his daughter did a TED talk about it, and then got banned from TED Talks from talking about it. Anyway, I'm just saying. Hey, I'm not going on an all meat diet anytime soon.
Okay.
But I'm just saying.
But I also just want to be careful about presenting this story, because you don't want to be accused of being a climate change denier, right? And so anyone who is sort of a militant ecologist might say, well, there has to be a pain point in order to save the planet, right? And so why not start here? But I think that is really the question, is where do we start, right? Does the government then put the pain far away from itself and continue other wasteful ways, right? And so I'm interested in that piece of it, and along the lines of like how the government's used the pandemic to hurt small businesses, wage war on small businesses while reward their wealthy friends, right? Is the green movement another way that governments can disenfranchise small business in order to consolidate power? And in fact, I found a book today as I was researching this, which I will read, called False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet. And so is this another way that the government is using a movement to hurt people that are not involved in government? The author of the book is Bjorn Lomborg. So read with me.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.